Hi, hello, I'm Sue England. I'm doing a little section for the human rights team at Falco. And most of you have probably noticed that there's lots of news coming in from Poland, particularly about women, big demonstrations, all sorts of problems. So what I'm going to do is a very short bit, 10 minutes on, well, what is going on in Poland? And this is part of, I'm doing a series of presentations at the moment and discussion groups for people in Falco. So this is on the basis of human rights issues in Poland. I don't, okay, right. This is new for me being recorded. Okay, so first slide. Here's a bit about it all. Lots of demonstrations. This famous logo now that they've got, which is Polish for Women's Strike. And what I'm doing is what I do for these things is I give you a few links that you can go to later because you'll get all the slides. So what's happening right now is now for about 2 weeks, there have been demonstrations all over Poland. And there are a couple of links about what's actually happening day to day. And it seems to be happening every day at the moment. Everybody is really angry. And a lot, it's not just women, other people are joining them too. So this situation has been building up for a long time, and actually it covers lots of different issues. The last straw amongst a haystack of all sorts is this recent Polish governmental action on abortion. But this is part of a much, much bigger story. But just to sketch that one in, women in Poland were used to abortion. They had it during the Soviet times. The wall came down in 1989 and there was a great deal of chaos. But in 1993, most abortion was actually then banned. Practically all abortion in Poland is illegal at the moment. And because it was 1993 that the Catholic Church obtained huge political and legal power in Poland. And they did that by means of what they call an international treaty. These are called concordats. It was made by the government of Poland when there wasn't a parliament sitting with the Vatican by undemocratic means. Now, what does this do? It makes Polish people have to pay lots to the Vatican. It doesn't. It means that they don't have the principle of separation of church and state in Poland. This is now in the Constitution too. There, for example, the state is now permanently obliged to provide Catholic religious education in all state schools. This means there's no education on sexual and reproductive rights for any children, and there's actually lots more. So Poland doesn't really have a sort of normal democratic situation anymore. You go and look up your country in Concordat Watch. I've given you the link there. Your country might have one of these too, and you might well be surprised at what you find. So just skipping back to the abortion thing, it's a normal, as it were, Western country. There could be 80 to 180,000 abortions a year. Very difficult to know because all except 1,500 are illegal. Women do what they always do. They go expensively to doctors in Poland or they go abroad. The only allowance now is if the woman's actually going to die or she was raped or, you know, the child is already ailing and is going to die in her womb or shortly after birth. That's about 1,000 of them. And this law is seeking to shut them down. Well, what's the background to all this? Well, one major thing is that over this 25-year period, contraception has been massively reduced. Poland has the worst figures in the whole European Union, only 42%. for example, UK, France would be 90%, for example. Now, just in the background here, the legal background, the UN is now saying that abortion is a human right. Preventable maternal deaths are a violation of women's right to life. And they say your right to life actually begins at birth. And they're very concerned about the damage to women's health, emotional life, everything, the suffering that comes from not having access to abortion. And they're saying one particular thing is that countries, and Poland includes this, you can't have this conscientious objection for doctors and other medical workers unless it's properly controlled and it doesn't damage the human rights of women. That basically means if you don't want to do it, you have to make sure that she can go to somebody else and be treated by them. But so, you know, to come back to how this is all set into the whole Polish situation, Poland is now effectively a single party dictatorship. This government is attacking every state institution. Some of us here may find that familiar. The military, the courts, for example. But Poland's in the European Union. And the courts are now so completely non-independent and under government control that the European Union has been forced to take it to court several times and says Polish judges are no longer independent. So anybody throughout the European Union who's got anything to do with Poland under this sort of, international system, you can't trust a Polish judge. This is really serious. This was getting online, on stream, but of course, COVID has come along. So these cases are still going on, but the politicians are distracted. In Poland, there's also now been for 20 years or more, very strong control of the press. There is disdain for international agreements, the international UN agreements that say women, for example, and children should have access to sexual and reproductive rights. And this is all part of, the political campaigning. The government has spread hatred against gays as part of its political maneuvers. At the moment, 1/3 of Polish towns have declared themselves to be gay-free zones. And at the same time, there's now persecution of all sorts of opponents, politicians, teachers, if you discuss certain things with your students and children, women's rights workers, gay rights workers, they are being persecuted. Oh, and here I just found another little logo. This is a sign, you see, that you'll now see in Poland. No gay rights here, no gays here. Of course, that actually means. Now, coming back to the sense that this is all part of a package, Law and Justice is the name of the ruling party. In Polish, that comes out as PiS, and you might, I think, some of you might have seen the signs saying PiS off that are now being advertised all over in these demonstrations. They have got a sort of pet semi-independent legal organization called Ordo Iuris. There's different ways of pronouncing it, I'm not sure. But the package is there should be no divorce, no contraception, no prenatal diagnostics, no IVF, no, all gay rights should be removed. You shouldn't have access to voluntary sterilization if you wish to do that. I'm sorry, I've put gay rights again, but do you remember I mentioned gay rights? Because that was all over the government-controlled media, all over the press, everywhere, especially during the most recent elections. But also, they are against the Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. Okay, so this slide, the name of the ruling party is Law and Justice. In Polish, they write PiS, which has allowed all the demonstrators to have signs saying PiS off. You might see them if you look at some of the newspaper reports. And there's this organization called Ordo Lures. It's meant to sort of mean, you know, sort of institute of law and ethics or something. And they are using them, you know, as an attack organization, and they're producing a lot of stuff for them, which I'm going to tell you about. Now, they are part of Tradition, Family and Property, which is a set of interrelated conservative Catholic-inspired organizations, which are actually throughout the world. The membership is all male, of course. And Ordo Lures or Juris, they are huge in Poland. But I list some of the others there you can glance at, and you might have come across some of the others. They're very politically active, as well as sort of claiming to be sort of independent, legal sort of institutes. So the whole package here, our haystack, is that this government and these people are completely against divorce, contraception, prenatal diagnostics, IVF, all gay rights, voluntary sterilization. Oh, did I mention gay rights? Okay, because at the last election, they very much hammered this. And I talked to Poles who are not, okay, maybe that politically aware, and they thought that the most important thing in that election was gay rights, and somehow they were going to be saved from gay rights. But the other thing they're against is the Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence. In short, everybody calls this the Istanbul Convention. It's just like, you know, the Paris Climate Treaty. It's got attached the name of a city to it. But that's what it does. What it says on the tin is what it does. It's a major new initiative to try to tackle violence against women and domestic violence. It primarily, you know, is addressed to the sort of violence that women suffer from, but violence against anybody is included, so it covers women, children, and men. But this government and these organizations, they don't want that. It seems they're quite happy with violence against women and domestic violence. So, and I'm rapidly coming to an end. I mean, this is not a long piece. Poland did actually ratify the Istanbul Convention in 2015, which means it was supposed to say, okay, we agree with all this and we're going to go with it and try and do something about these things. But the Catholic Church strongly objects to it for all sorts of reasons. So in July this year, the Polish government said it's going to withdraw from it. This is absolutely extraordinary in international human rights terms. But in place, they have another text, which this Ordo Juris has supplied for them, and which has a very traditional view of, you know, family life. It actually sort of says that discipline, as it were, in the family against women and children is okay. It would, if the Polish government signs up, effectively bans what they called interfering in fertility in any way. So, you know, all these things I've listed would be completely shut down, and I'm sure you wouldn't even be allowed to get them privately. And unbelievably enough, they say there will be baby boxes set up everywhere in Poland for the children that parents can't look after. Now, these are these boxes, you know, where you abandon a child to the church. You know, you go and put it in a box in a wall and it disappears inside. Personally, I thought that they had disappeared with the Middle Ages, but apparently this is an idea which is now making a comeback. So, you know, like, why all this? Well, in this text, it specifically says there are terrible problems all around the world. Women aren't having enough children, and also in Poland. And we must act to put an end to all that. So you can see then, in this context, how all this is fitting together and where this comes from. So we have lack of democracy. We have huge pushback against all sorts of rights, including women's rights, children's rights, and particularly about violence. But the headline is always justice abortion. And so you can see that the government in Poland, they're using these things, part of a bigger plan, but part of headline things that they want to do. They want to stop the Istanbul Convention, and they also, want to really drill down on women's rights and abortion rights as well. So that is really what's the bigger picture of what's going on in Poland. And so, having looked at it, because the European Union's not doing much about it at all, the UN's not doing much about it, this Council of Europe, which is our regional human rights organization in Europe, is not doing much about it practically at the moment. So I think women and the men who are now supporting them have got to save Poland from all this haystack of horrible things, and perhaps the rest of us too. And there I've just made you a picture, because when I went and looked online about all this, I discovered these things are cropping up around the world. And here is one, for example, from Indiana. And I would have thought most of us were not too keen on seeing too many of these things. So that's the end of my quick run through of all this. I've got another slide. Okay, no, move to this one. I've got another slide, and there simply I've put some links about all the things I've talked about that people can follow up if they want to do a bit of reading, doing a bit of rummaging around on what's going on. And then my final slide is just to tell everybody, most of this year I've been doing human rights sessions for people. I'm a lawyer, but it's definitely human rights law for non-lawyers, and people from my club, Falco, various other people who've got interested are coming to them, and everybody is welcome. They're continuing at the moment on Mondays, and they will continue next year. So if anybody is interested in exploring human rights, you're very welcome. Just contact me and I'll send you a link. Thank you. Have a great conference.